After years and years and years of overspending and now facing what appears to be a $16 billion deficit, Washington legislators work on tax proposals to raise taxes to meet that $16 billion deficit, all with days left before the session ends. How's this going to go down? You got it. Tax and spend continues in Washington state. Raise those taxes. Drive out big business. Drive out wealthy people. Drive out everybody but the folks who don't really contribute to the economy. And we'll just see how that works. California's done it. Here we go. Let's check it out.
Figure budget writers also found out the uncertainty in Washington, D.C. could make the state's budget woes even worse. The Democrats who write the proposals say they're looking at cuts, new taxes, even tapping into the state's emergency savings accounts.
So the rainy day fund is there, and it's named the rainy day fund for when it's raining. It's raining.
And it's raining because you won't stop spending on ridiculous crap that nobody needs. Washington state is the worst. We are just completely run by Democrats. And they just come up with the horse's ass ridiculous things to spend money on. And it's no different than California. If you just keep throwing money at ridiculousness, eventually you're going to get to that point where you're not going to have the revenue to cover it. And Washington state's revenue has grown exponentially because we keep bringing a whole bunch of companies in and we have great employment centers and all of that stuff. We've had an affordable quality of life up until, what some would say the last 10 years or so, but I think it's been longer than that. Now you've got California-styled legislators, and they just want to tax the crap out of everything, and specifically high net worth individuals and big business. How's that going to work out? Now, we need everybody to pay their fair share. Well, they are, and you are spending it on ridiculous programs. So,
Democratic Speaker of the House Lori Jenkins says Washingtonians would rather see new taxes than deep cuts to state services.
Retarded.
This afternoon, the state's Revenue Forecast Council added about $1 billion to the estimated deficit over the next 4 years. Democratic Governor Bob Ferguson has said taxes should be a last resort, but his proposed cuts only cover about half of that deficit. Democratic Senate Majority
Oh, great. All right. You can't propose all taxation. You can't propose all taxation to get us there. Okay, you can't propose all cuts to get us there. Now, my program only comes up with half, $8 billion in to get us where we need to be with the $16 billion budget deficit. That's what I'm going with. But so I came up with half. You guys come up with the rest. Just make it happen. Yeah, but don't tax, don't cut any important programs and don't tax this is literally what Bob Ferguson, our governor, said. Don't tax the rich. And you're left with, okay, so what are you going to do? You got to cut a whole bunch of programs. And Washington state Republicans say that the income is there to cover. You're just going to have to whack a bunch of ridiculous, nonsensical programs to get there. And nobody wants to do that because, we're going to lose whatever funding for whatever Mickey Mouse little program that's completely unnecessary.
Leader Jamie Peterson says he and others want to increase taxes on the wealthiest in the state.
It's not just the farmers,
Genius.
it's the independents and a lot of Republicans who also feel like the whole system has been rigged against working class and middle class folks.
We need to keep
rigged. It's been rigged. You're in an economic area where only wealthy people can afford to live here. You've got incredible amount of tech jobs. You've had the perfect storm of business coming in, and then all of a sudden the game is rigged against the working man. It's not rigged. It's just changed wildly. And that's what happens when you have billions and billions of dollars and net worth and equity come into the area and grow. And so you can't say that it's rigged against the working man. It's just the way that it is. It's like the real estate market. We need more affordable housing. There's no affordable housing in Washington state. None. There just isn't. So expecting any, not going to happen. You're going to have to go to another state. You're going to have to go to another region to find affordable housing because you're not going to find it in the Pacific Northwest. You're not going to find it in Washington. You're not going to find it in, Vancouver, kind of considered part of that. You're not going to find it in Oregon. And you're especially not going to find that in California for the most part. So this whole thing of it's rigged. It's like, okay, that's just not my perspective. This is how the area has developed. And you want all this taxation, you want all this revenue coming in. That's fine. But you got to respect the people who brought it in. And it's big business, and big business is run by high net worth individuals, and they make good decisions. Jeff Bezos just left Seattle. He just sold his house for $63.1 million on Hunts Point in West Bellevue, just a few miles from where I'm sitting. He said, adios, muchachos. I'm moving to Florida so he can, miss out on just being taxed the F with his net worth, because Washington State's going to go after individuals like that. It'll be just like California, pushing out the people who actually drive the innovation, drive the development, and drive the businesses that pay all the bills. But let's tax them anyway. Let's just go there.
The rainy day fund whole and keep options open for the future, because the future is unclear. And the most irresponsible thing I think we could do this year is to pass additional taxes when we clearly do not have to pass them.
Senator Chris Gildon.
Agreed.
Republicans say the budget can be balanced without raising new taxes.
Huh.
We'll get our first look
Weird.
at Democratic proposals next Monday. In Olympia, 𝗧𝗓, King 5 News.
So here's some of those highlights. Washington State Senate passed tax increases on capital gains and estate taxes, dropping a property tax cap increase. So we've got a 1% increase. Democrats are dying to break that 1% increase and just move it up to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7%. That the property taxes could be raised in a year. I mean, they're dying to do that because there's so much equity. There's so much taxation that could happen in the state of Washington because we got some real estate, right? But then what you're doing is you're basically pushing people out. And I've been telling people for a long time, you're not going to want to retire in Washington State. By the time, my generation gets to retirement age, which we're getting there. I'm 56. I'll be 57 in November. We're getting there, right? Washington is going to be so expensive, and it's going to have so much regulation. It's going to have so much taxation on our income that you're not going to want to live here. And that's pushing people out. So wealthy people leave, and then who's left? Well, a bunch of people that need resources that aren't contributing what the other folks who left to the economy. It's a never-ending cycle. So what do? Well, then you just got to keep raising taxes. And that is literally what's happening in Washington State. Just got to keep raising those taxes. Like the Republicans say, you could probably do it with some cuts. Nobody wants to cut because then, it's like you're firing people. People feel bad. And you've got a bunch of misguided folks here in the state of Washington who are just all so concerned about their fellow constituent losing their job or whatever. But you got to make some hardcore cuts. You got a $16 billion deficit and you don't want to raise taxes. I mean, Democrats would love to raise some taxes because tax and spend, right? I mean, that's the mantra. Governor Ferguson supports minimizing impacts on working people, criticizing some proposals, but sees progress towards a signable budget. All right. It'll be really curious to see what they come up with. It's not going to be genius. It's not going to be smart, and it's probably not going to work. But, whatever. Politics in Washington State, you just got to kind of grin and bear it, right? You just got to bend over and take it and go, okay, all right, that's over. Budget deadline is Sunday with the potential for a legislative extension to meet priorities. Let's see. $16 billion deficit. Did you get there? Did you figure out how to account for it all? No. All right. Get back in there and let's meet to square away those priorities. Politics in Washington State. Saturday, the Senate passed a handful of revenue proposals, capital gains, estate taxes, certain tax preferences, extending the sales tax to computer-related services. Trio of bills are slated for a vote out of a House committee Tuesday morning. Budget troubles for Washington. What they're saying, we have to modernize the tax code to keep up with the economy. No, you don't. You just have to stop spending on ridiculous, nonsensical stuff that Democrats always spend on. You know, there's 4 Democrats down in El Salvador right now. It might be 5, trying to get some guy out who's a member of MS-13. And he's got a history of violence against his partner. So we have to modernize the tax code to keep up with the economy. No, you got enough revenue. You just need to stop spending. So we have the resources we need to provide for public schools. Our public schools are not great. Healthcare, not great. Public safety in Washington state. Really? We're going to talk about public safety. King County has the 9th worst metro system as far as violence in the United States. Just had a bus driver get murdered. Murked. Yeah, got murdered. Bus driver. I got people texting me saying, that doesn't even happen to us here in LA. I mean, you can kind of ride the bus in LA, but when your bus driver gets killed, that's kind of a sign of what you got going on. And the key services to protect our most vulnerable residents. They're always worried about the most vulnerable residents, but they're not willing to look at who actually pays the bills. They're just not. So you're gonna push Washington state into the ground, and that's happening right now. You're gonna have businesses leave. Businesses, big business like Amazon. We literally had our resident nut job, 𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗘𝗦𝗧𝗔𝗠𝗣, member of the Communist Party. She basically ran tax Amazon. And what did Amazon do when it came to, campus number 2? Not Seattle. But as it turns out, they couldn't really work out another place to really go to. Bellevue is where Amazon has kind of landed, right where I am, just a few miles down the road. Amazon has multiple buildings in the downtown core, and they're going to go there. You know why? Because Bellevue doesn't push big business out. Seattle does. But now you've got this umbrella of nonsense coming from the state level politicians, and they're trying to figure out where can we squeeze more money from. So Republicans, however, have long said that tax increases on businesses and wealthy individuals will be passed down onto working people and ultimately harm the economy. And that's a lot of what you got going on in California right now, right? I mean, when you push out businesses and when businesses leave, what happens? The income's got to come from somewhere. Prices got to go up. Costs, have to be covered. And so folks like gasoline in California. How about that? I mean, that whole gasoline thing. Oh, we're going to have the cleanest emissions. Yeah, but you're absolutely screwing your working people because they can't afford the extremely expensive gasoline. But hey, let's go ahead and virtue signal on that. We're sending an unmistakable signal to folks who are interested in investing and building our economy to create an economy that raises everybody's boats. That you are no longer, what you're telling them, that you are no longer welcome here in Washington. 100% true. 100% true. And this is what Senate Minority Leader John Braun, Republican from Centralia, that's down south, during the debate on increasing capital gains and estate taxes. So they were literally just going for it. They were going to do a property revenue growth deal, trying to get around the 1% cap, and just do a bunch of other stuff that is it's crazy what happens here in Washington state because it is California politics, but because it's here in Washington state and, we got Canada to the north of us and to the south of us, we've got Oregon, not exactly the bastion of comparison that you want to look to. Oregon's even worse. And then you go one state further down the line and you've got California. So we've got the petri dish here in the Pacific Northwest, and particularly Washington and Oregon, of how not to run your economies, how not to run your governments. Now, in Seattle, you've had kind of a big shift towards the center. people trying to moderate a lot of that damage that was done by 𝗧𝗪 and a bunch of other just absolute whack job, mentally incapable politicians that have, tried to run the city into the ground because of, they're communists. And they basically want to, let's make Seattle a communist city. That's what they're doing. One thing I will say for our new governor, Bob Ferguson. Ferguson's been critical of tax proposals from legislative Democrats this session, calling the package currently being advanced unsustainable and too risky because he knows it's going to drive away high net worth individuals who run big businesses and the businesses that they bring here, because you've got a labor pool, you've got a intellect pool of people, software developers shifting now to AI. You've got a ton of that going on. And if people know we're going to get taxed, up the backside, if we come to Washington State, that's going to deter them from coming. And that is the process that we are heavily in right now, because we've got all Democrats. We've got a supermajority in our legislative in Olympia. Democrats run everything and they just want to tax spend. We've got more programs that we need to fund. And you're like, really? What are they? Well, we need to fund the whatever ukulele stringing of, just stuff that you're like, that doesn't matter. Nobody cares about that, but Democrats do. So let's get her done in the state of Washington. Let's exclude all those folks who actually pay the bills. Let's push them away. Let's turn them away, and we'll get the ukuleles dealt with. And that's what we do on a consistent basis. Why do I still continue to live here and take this ridiculousness? Because I got podcasts for days. And it's where I grew up. It's where my son is. It's where my family is. It's where my businesses are. So I will grin and bear it to the bitter end, whatever that may be. Probably not that much longer. But, in the meantime, I'm living in behind enemy lines. And this is the result of it. You just get a bunch of nut jobs in your, political process that make really, truly horrible decisions. But we've already seen that before. In California, in Oregon, anywhere that's run by a bunch of Democrats, you see the end result, which is a bunch of social programs which require a ton of money, a ton of taxation. And at the end of the day, people are like, I've got other options. I can take my business elsewhere and I can go there. I can go and move to, One of the big storylines right now is how many people and businesses that have moved from Washington State to Idaho. Idaho has sucked up some incredible numbers. It's like, and when I start talking about Idaho, I'll invariably have comments. Stop talking about Idaho. We're all full. We don't want any more of the people coming here from Washington State. They are tainting our environment. So what'll happen in Washington State? We'll do some cuts. Mainly we'll do a bunch of increases of ridiculous taxes. And then, we'll keep voting blue. Just keep voting blue. Last election, Washington State went some of the bluest that there is out there. All right. If it's not working, just double down, keep voting blue. It'll work out in the end, right? We're seeing what that looks like in real time. We're experiencing it. What's going on with Amazon? That kind of thing. All right. That's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next episode. Bye for now.